huge Kaba nest on it, these night wasps. And so these things start swarming us. Yeah. I know. I feel more stable after having done that.
Right. You already need the patch anymore.
You can be very happy in the fact that Mako shark is thinking about catching a David.
Yeah, that's right. I like that dynamic.
What's the funniest thing you've experienced on a fly fishing trip?
Yeah, I was trying to think through a lot of different trips, and I think the first one that came to mind was going to Alaska the first time. I was with my friend Bear. And if you, I'm not going to tell that whole story, but if you ever travel with a guy named Bear and you go to Alaska, just when you find the grayling that you're looking for and he's on another trail, don't start yelling his name because his name's Bear. It freaks other people out. And, but honestly, the hardest I ever laughed, I was just absolutely, I could not get oxygen. First time I went down to the Amazon to shoot photos, and we went out at night. It's a peacock bass trip with nomadic waters. We went out one night with a few guides to try to grab caiman, like alligator, kind of lizard or reptile.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah. And, you try to grab maybe a 2 or 3 footer. My biggest that I've ever actually successfully grabbed is like a 4 footer. I've missed twice on a 5 footer because my hand's not big enough. There are these things called night wasps. And it's like one of those nightmare insects that, if you get stung by one, you're never going to forget it. And so We're all wearing headlamps, and it's the kind where you go on, strobe, bright, low, strobe, off. And so if you get into a panic situation where you've got to get these things off, you're not going to get them turned off. And so what happens is we take the boat, we're spotlighting these caiman. We see some eyeballs that look like they're about the right size. We ram the boat into the bank to try to just, get on top of the thing quick and grab it, get a few pictures, put it back in the water. Well, we accidentally rammed a log that had a huge Kaba nest on it, these night wasps. And so these things start swarming us, and they're coming towards the lights. And so the guides are yelling, lights off, lights off. And so everybody on the boat, it's like 6 people on the boat. We're all going, from bright to low to strobe to off to back to bright. You're passing it. Yeah. And so it's like this huge strobe light because everybody's cycling through. And so one of the guys already had Connor Jones, he was a manager at Cohutta Fishing Company in Georgia for a long time. He already had a caiman in his hand, and he's waving, he's swatting at these night wasps with a caiman. But all I'm seeing, it was like the scene from Saturday Night Fever where John Travolta's, doing the little dance and the strobe light, and you're only seeing like that number. And so we're all getting lit up and stung, and these things are throbbing for hours. But we're all laughing so hard because of the mixture of pain and chaos. So that's probably my most memorable. When I think of like just absolute ridiculous situations. That was one that I hope to never be in again, but I'm kind of glad I was in that one.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible and funny all at the same time. Well, let's see if I can finish this next part in 15 seconds. Here we go. From high atop the world headquarters of Southeastern Fly, this is the Southeastern Fly podcast. Thanks for stopping by and giving us a listen. Feel free to share this with your friends and fishing partners. Subscribe or follow so you'll be the first to know when an episode drops. Remember, we have the podcast by Southeastern Fly Facebook group. They help us with our direction and the questions we ask in these episodes, and they have some questions that are in this particular episode as well. If you find value in the podcast, please drop by the Southeastern Fly store at southeasternfly.com. Explore the merch that fuels the Southeastern Fly podcast. We've got hats and t-shirts and hoodies. We've got some new winter gear, and that's what supports this podcast. Also, if you need additional information on fly fishing techniques, flies, fly tying gear, waters, etc., we've got fly fishing coaching sessions as well. So who's our guest today? He's a full-time outdoor photographer. You can see his work in ads and publications such as Cabela's, Bass Pro, Southern Living, the Fly Fish Journal, Winston Rods, Strung Magazine, Gray Sporting Journal, and Tail Fly Fishing Magazine. He travels extensively throughout the year with his work. He was a guest on episode number 7 of the Southeastern Fly podcast. Let's welcome David Cannon. David, Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me back, David.
So good to see you. And I'm going to give up a little bit of information on David here that you're in South Dakota this evening.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, we're at R&R pheasant hunting. It is just a beautiful, awesome part of the country. Huge, beautiful pheasants. I think it's like 23,000 acre ranch that we're on.
Okay.
Pretty awesome place.
And you're working?
Yeah, I'm actually shooting for Cabela's and Bass Pro up here.
Okay. All right. Can you bring me back some real nice pheasant tails? Not that pheasant tails work, because we all know those flies don't work.
No, nobody's ever caught a fish on one of those. Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't believe they have. This particular episode is about traveling, and we've got a little bit of a surprise here about maybe here in a couple minutes. We're going to bring in somebody else that I think everybody will be interested in. David, I've been pretty lucky to travel within the continental United States. Both by plane and by car, with boats and without boats. I've carried too much gear and too much clothing every time I've been. So my motto is, if there's a place to pack something in that place. Mm-hmm. So I'm a terrible role model for anybody out there that wants to travel light or not fill every pocket of every backpack and every duffel bag.
Yeah.
I carry too much stuff. The interesting thing is I have a backpack that I carry on the plane if I'm traveling by plane. Sometimes I'll carry my rods in the backpack. Sometimes I'll put it in my duffel bag, and it's a big green Orvis duffel bag. I don't know how many times I've been standing at the baggage claim and somebody said, "Hey, I believe that's mine," thinking that they're going to get a whole bunch of good stuff. Mostly it's clothes or waiters and stuff.
Yeah.
But if anybody ever tries to, it takes two hands to lift the thing up. We get on Southwest, they've got that 50-pound max.
Yep.
And we traveled as a family one time, and I told Delaney, my daughter, I said, don't pack everything in that suitcase that you can, because you're going to be over. Well, whenever I took them out of the truck, I threw mine down on the ground. I grabbed hers, and hers felt heavier than mine did.
Yeah.
So when we got up to weigh them, mine was 51 pounds and hers was 48 pounds.
Oh, man.
So we had to take a little bit out of mine and put it in hers and do some jockeying around. But yeah, we still laugh about that to this day. But
I'm sure that's one she's kept in her memory.
Oh yeah, yeah. She's not shy about bringing stuff like that up either, and I guess she is her father's daughter.
Yep.
So, what is your thought process and actual packing process for packing gear and clothes and when traveling by plane and by rental car?
Yeah, gosh, it's so different for every trip and for every destination, weather, climate, the activities you're going to be doing and all that. I think I would boil it down to this, though. I think just a typical human trait is we've got a little bit or some level. I think almost everybody has some level of fear of the unknown. And so, it could be subtle for some people. It could be so extreme for some people that they don't go travel, but I think everybody's got it. And I think one of the ways that we kind of cope with that is we pack as much comfort as we can into that suitcase. And so I think you can alleviate that by just simply talking to, if you're going to stay at a lodge or you're going to, stay at a hotel, but you're going to be hosted by an outfitter or a guide for 3 or 4 days or a week or whatever, talk to that guide. Like, make sure you get some time on the phone with them, talk to that lodge owner and say, all right, what do I really need to bring? And then the other question I would ask them, well, first of all, what do I really need to bring? And then actually take their advice, because they've been there more than you, right? Rule number 1 is listen to your guide. And that applies to packing too.
Yeah.
But then after that, just also ask them, what do they have there that you could use that you don't have to bring, that you don't have to pack? And that simplifies things so much. If you're going to fish stripers in Boston, or you're going to go fish tarpon down in the Keys, or, something like that, most guys don't have a 10 weight or a 12 weight.
Right.
And if you don't want to have that excuse, or, you want to just kind of keep the expenses to, just to travel, you might be able to use some of the guide stuff, or the outfitter might be able to rent you, a couple of outfits or something like that. And to me, that's almost always worth that little bit of extra money, just to save the hassle and save having to buy all that extra stuff if you don't want to do that right then.
I don't have a tarpon rod. I've got several 10 weights for muskie and striper and that sort of thing, but I can't bring myself to buy a 12 weight.
Yeah.
Just because I'd use it once a year maybe. And that's not to say that I've used every rod in the arsenal, but, if you're not going to do it several times a year, maybe it is better to use the guide stuff. And they know their equipment too. And I think that's helpful.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's kind of overall my mentality now is just keeping it as simple as what do the people who live there and do this every day say that I really need to bring? But you're still going to be fighting that temptation, most people, to, I do kind of like this, like these real comfy pajama pants that weigh a bunch, or, I don't know what the thing is, but packing more stuff than you need to pack.
Yeah, I am not kidding. I am terrible at doing that. Like, this is kind of a funny story, but it also ties into where we are sitting right here, right now. Around town, I would take, wife and daughter out to eat. I'd see somebody I know. We'd go to church. I'd see somebody I know. We'd go to Target, Walmart. I'd see somebody I know because it's not a big town. Murfreesboro's not a huge town.
Yeah.
My daughter kept saying, everywhere we go, you see somebody you know. I'm like, yeah, and don't you forget that either, because if you're doing something you shouldn't be, I'm going to get a report back. Yep. And that worked for a lot of years too. But we went to Chicago on, my wife had a work trip, and Delaney and I just tagged along just for 3 days, and we ate at all the nice restaurants, and we went up into all the tall buildings, and we walked along Lake Michigan, and we got to the airport. We were sitting there waiting on the plane, and she said, "You know what, Dad? You haven't seen one person up here that you know." And I said, "You know what? You're right." I said, "It's one of the few trips that I don't just run into somebody I know, even traveling to far away places, like on vacation or something like that.
Yeah.
Unless I'm out in California or something." So while we were sitting there and the plane gets there, I get on the plane. I'm sitting on the aisle seat. She's sitting between me and my wife, and I hear, "David." And I look up, and it's my doctor. And I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he said, "Oh, not much. I'm up here, for a wedding or whatever." And I just looked at Delaney like, "Uh-huh."
There it is.
There it is, right. It finally came along. And you're kind of in the same situation today. You were telling me earlier, whenever you got in the truck, which is a story that you should tell as well, but when you got in the truck, you ran into somebody that fly fishes.
Yeah.
And then whenever we talked the other night, you're like, "Hey, you got to talk to this guy." So tell us what happened there, and then we'll bring him in.
Yeah, so I'd gotten a text from the lodge owner here, and they said, it's just, South Dakota is not the most populated place. It's not exactly Atlanta, and this story will evidence that. They said, once you get to the airport, this is in South Dakota, there's going to be a black Escalade in the parking lot. And I was thinking, okay, I'll go take my stuff in there and get in with whoever's driving. But then it said the key is in the gas tank. Maybe you should edit out what airport I just said, because somebody's going to listen to this and go steal that Escalade, because it might there. It might sit there more than just this trip. So I was like, okay. So I went and got it. And I'm driving a few guys who were going to hunt at this lodge. And this guy, Frank, is sitting next to me. And so we're talking about stuff. We start talking fishing. He said, do you indicator fish much? And I said, yeah. I said, I probably my favorite for trout is like, dry dropper or maybe streamer fishing. But yeah, I indicator fish a lot. He goes, "Have you heard of airlock?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. That's what I use. Like, used to use thingamabobber a whole bunch, but since airlock came out, that's what people say now. Most people don't even say strike indicator anymore. They say, "Hey, I need to, can you toss me an airlock?" It's like, It's got that kind of brand recognition. So he goes, "Yeah, I hold the patent on it and stuff." And I was like, "Wait a second, you invented airlock?" And so, it's just kind of funny. So, we're kind of fast friends. That, and his wife's name is Anjali, which is a Hindi name. And that's also my oldest daughter's middle name. So we had some kind of interesting little connections there. So, really, really cool guy. So yeah, I was excited to be able to introduce him to you.
I want to get him in on another episode on indicator fishing, I guess, or something like that anyway. But yeah, let's pull him into the conversation. Frank Rosenbloom, inventor of airlock indicators, holds the patent on those. Frank, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you for having me. It's great to see you.
Yeah, you too. You need to be a little more careful about who you hang out with on these.
Oh, I know.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, bad influences.
Yes, absolutely. He may drive the Escalade home, just so you know.
No,
so
what I'm going to do
on that too.
What I'm going to do is take him to Walmart. Frank doesn't know this side of my life. So
No, you need to get to know the Walmart yarns. His Walmart stories are absolutely priceless. Yeah, anybody that's not friends with David on Facebook, you're really missing out on some really good writing. So, hey, Frank, I think what we're going to do is bring you in on this next question that came from the podcast group. So we've got a podcast group, and they pretty much drive this whole thing for us as far as where these questions go. What David Perry looks for, and I enjoy it, are the lodges. I enjoy clean beds, great food, good hospitality. What are some of the things that you look for when you're selecting a lodge?
What I basically look for, I do want to be comfortable. I mean, I don't want to be in a kind of a flea-bitten, type of, bed bugs and things of that sort. So it's got to be, number one, it's got to be a place that has a reputation for cleanliness. That's important to me. I usually travel with my wife now that we're, older and the kids are older and out of the house. And so she requires a certain level of cleanliness and comfort. She doesn't want to sleep in a tent or some terrible place. The other thing that's really important is the amenities that are available. So if I'm off fishing, she doesn't fish quite as much as I do. There should be something for her to do. I mean, it's people to interact with or something that's in the area. But the most important thing is a reputation for what they do. The guide service there, how the place has to be where there's good fishing, where naturally there's good fishing, and the helpfulness of the staff. When you call up and you talk to people and you want to go there, and they're how friendly and accommodating are they over the phone when you talk to them? And that's, I think, really important. I think the personal interaction with people is the most important thing. And so those are some of the things I look for. Of course, you want to get, if you want to go fish in the North Platte or the Missouri, you want to go where the fishing is good. And that's first and foremost, but certainly the lodge, the physical accommodations, the other things to do in the area. And the third thing is the people.
That's a great point. If I can interject on that for a second, because I think, to draw a parallel like to your world, David, we all know guides who became fishing guides because they love fishing and not necessarily because they love people. And right. It's clear that you love people. And so you're in the right job. It's the same thing in the hospitality industry. There's a lot of lodges out there that have great hospitality. They really it's kind of their heartbeat to want to serve people. But there are, unfortunately, like anything else, there are lodges out there who they got into it because they love fishing or they love hunting or whatever they're drawing people in to do. Right. But they don't love hospitality. And so that's what Frank just said. That's a great point, because if you get on the phone with them, any lodge that is even halfway booked is going to be busier than any of us would ever want it, because there's always a million things that they got to do to keep things moving and keep things as they should be. But even with all that pressure and all the demands and all the work that has to be done, if they're not willing to be hospitable with you and take a few minutes with you, a reasonable amount of time with you, that's a red flag, and that should be considered when you're making your decision.
I've got a friend that is a owner manager of a restaurant, and we were talking more in passing than anything as far as he was concerned. But I was telling him that, your next step ought to be a lodge somewhere. He has that. Mm-hmm. He has exactly what you just said. He can keep things moving, but at the same time, he's casual. You can't, like the old story about the duck. Calm on top, paddling like crazy on bottom. Yeah. He's that. Yeah. He's that in the restaurant business. And I think he would be outstanding in a lodge, but I don't know that he's quite ready to take that jump yet. But I see that in what you described. I see that in Jeff.
Those places are treasures. Like I think about Venice Fishing Lodge in Venice, Louisiana. Captain Billy Nicholas, who owns that place. He's a guy, he comes out and hangs out with the guests. He was the first one up.
Yeah, that's really important.
It is. Yeah. It makes such a difference for the guests, because they get to have the fishing experience. They get to know their guide, all that stuff. But then they also get to hang with the lodge owner who has fished with, all these legendary people and celebrities and all this stuff. And he's taking time with them and listening to their stories and getting to know them. And that becomes a lifelong memory. Lodge owners who don't do that, they're not building that into their brand, and they're not adding that extra little just cool piece to the experience for their guests.
I think, let me just mention something. I think that for most of us, I think there are people who might disagree that I'm human, but I am a human being. And we won't get my wife involved in this, but the most important thing in my life is my interactions with other people. Now I love fishing and I love fish, but I have never had a good conversation with a fish. And so the thing is that I like to go fishing where I'm going to interact with people at a level that makes me very comfortable and happy. And in that kind of milieu, I have a good time fishing.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I rarely go fishing all by myself. I go fishing with a good friend. I want to interact with people. So I think we all desire that level of interaction and that comfort and that friendship and camaraderie.
Yeah.
And if we don't get that, it's not a fun place. Even if the fishing is great and you're hooking monsters, if you're not happy with where you're staying, it just doesn't make it.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that coin, if the fishing's terrible and the weather's a mess and you can't get out as much as you want and you're stuck at the lodge,
yep.
If it's a great place and if the people there are like-minded people who are there to have a good time and enjoy one another, it'll still be a good experience. And lots of diehard anglers might hear that, having never experienced it, and think, well, nah, I couldn't. That's not what I'm going there for. That's true, and we all have that mindset. But man, it can save a trip if you're there with some fun, interesting people. I mean, I know lots of people who have had those experiences, and then they meet on a trip like that and travel together. After having met once and got trapped in a lodge, in bad weather for a few days. And so that's a gift.
It really is. I went to Louisiana and stayed at Woodland, and we came in late one night, and they accommodated us by fixing dinner for us well after everybody was done. But while we were waiting on our dinner to be made, I went up to the bar and the owner was there, and he was like, "Hey, you want some oysters?" Well, I don't, I've never turned that down ever in my life.
Well, yeah.
He would shuck him an oyster, he would shuck me an oyster, and we just sat there probably 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And just talk. I mean, that was 6 years ago. I still talk about that.
Right.
That still comes up to, we had good conversation.
And it didn't have to be 4 hours.
Oh, no.
You know what his timeline looks like and the pressure they have. And to take 30 minutes with you and do that's a big deal.
Yeah, it really is. And it was, and the conversation was great. And then the food down there is always outstanding.
Oh,
too,
yeah.
So.
God.
David, what do you think the first-time angler might not think about when they select a lodge?
There's a lot of things. One thing that I think really needs to be considered is, are they reputable? And that sounds like the most obvious thing in the world, but you really need to do your homework on that. And I would say if you see the best deal out there financially, it might be the most reputable place. There's a chance it might not be. I've heard horror stories. Fortunately, I've never experienced this personally, but I've heard horror stories of people flying to Alaska to king salmon fish at quote unquote deluxe tent accommodations. Like it's supposed to be a nice kind of, glamping sort of deal, king salmon fishing on this beautiful river. And they get there and it's like a moldy old Coleman dome tent with, little air mattresses that have been chewed up by rats and won't even hold air. And all they have to eat is hopefully whatever salmon they catch. Not the kings, but other stuff. And like some ramen noodles. I'm not joking.
Really?
Yeah. And it's they had a friend who 5 or 6 years ago had gone to this place. They said it was a great experience. Well, things can go downhill when you're in that world.
Yeah.
And so, these people had just dropped their service. And so really do your homework. And I would say, especially if you're budget conscious, which a lot of people are, if it's, X amount of dollars to do this trip and it's with a group that you're not 100% sure about, if you got to save up for another 6 months to go with the reputable group, save up for another 6 months and go with a reputable group, because that's the difference in you getting something good out of your money or just taking a big risk. For me, time is too valuable to waste with something like that, and money's too valuable to waste with a risk when there are so many reputable groups out there that should be getting our business.
You want value.
Exactly.
Yes.
And for everybody, that doesn't mean that it's got to be 5-star, and that doesn't mean it has to be the absolute honey hole of a certain region of the world. For some people, it's just, hey, I just want to go out west or whatever it is, But yeah, exactly, Frank. Just getting that value.
If you get that gut feeling that something's off, trust your gut.
Yes.
It may be perfectly fine for David or Frank, but it's something, if you get that feeling that something just isn't right for you, it probably isn't right for you for whatever reason. And that reason is probably very valid.
Yeah.
For you.
And you don't want to be thinking back to, man, I remember when I had that feeling and I should have listened to it. Yeah.
I've had that feeling before and looked back and had that Wish I would have listened to what my gut was telling me, but
Yep.
then you kind of have to make up your own excuse as to why you didn't. But in the end, I should have listened to what I was being told there. So
That's right.
So let's move on here. That was a good answers right there, and good conversation about lodges and that sort of thing. But let's move on to items here. Let's talk about some of the gear, but let's kind of look at it from a little bit different point of view. Let's each take one thing here. What is one of the most important items to remember when you're traveling? And I think I'll go first if that's all right with y'all.
Yeah.
I think the most important items to remember when you're traveling is not really an item per se. It is in a way. It's make sure whoever you're traveling with, you like them.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it makes for a long week or a long few days.
Yeah.
Especially if it's just you and one other person. Sometimes that's a little easier than a group anyway. But David said, yeah, like he knows what I'm talking about there. But make sure that make sure that it's somebody that you're like, yeah, that's good. I think this will be a good trip. And I've got a lot of friends that way. I'm very fortunate to have some good friends that I like to travel with and like to fish with and that sort of thing. But David, let's go to you. Let's go to you on this one, on the next one. What is one of the most important items to remember when you're traveling?
So yeah, I guess mine's going to be kind of weird too, because it depends on where it is. But if it's somewhere where I'm going to be even a little bit offshore and there's some waves, I have the just wussiest stomach of all time. And I have thrown up in front of clients on photo shoots. I've just thrown up a whole bunch. Anytime it's like more than a 3-inch wave, I'm going to throw up. So that seasick patch, if you're going, even if for me, even if you're going, if you're going tarpon fishing and you're just out kind of just past the breakers, I still can get kind of weird feeling even when I see land that close. But those little seasick patches are a miracle. They're like, $20 for 3 of them or something. You got to get a prescription, but that's a game changer for me. But this is the biggest thing when you're traveling. I think it doesn't matter where you're going. Your body can do weird things because you have a little bit of stress or maybe a little bit of anxiety you don't realize you're having because you're in a new place. Drinking water. I know it sounds way overly simple, but when you're on that plane going to wherever you're going, if you're flying, that plane is drying you out like crazy. And so my policy is I'll have one, like a ginger ale or something, but I'm chugging water the rest of the trip. Every time the flight attendant goes by, I'm asking for more water. And then one good side effect, or really for me, it's the only side effect of that seasick patch, is it gives you a little dry mouth, which is okay with me because that just means I'm drinking water all day. For me, that alleviates a lot of those issues that you have. It helps you avoid having headaches or not being able to sleep that well, or some of the things that come with travel to new places. And again, going back to Frank's word, that value, you don't want to miss a day on that trip, or you don't want to miss a half a day on that trip because you had a migraine or something. Make sure you got something, take your water bottle or whatever, keep it full and keep emptying it by chugging it all day.
Do you use that patch behind your ear? Or whatever?
Yeah, that's it. And you put it on if you're going to be out on the boat for 3 days. You put it on the night before. Yeah. You sleep in it, and it's constantly giving you medicine for 3 full days. You shower with it. You don't even know it's there. It's awesome.
It's called scopolamine. Yeah. And as a doc, I think that's great advice, by the way.
Thanks. Well, I stayed at a Holiday Inn once. So
yes.
Sorry, that's an old dad joke. That's like 10 years old now. I apologize. Really that's shameful.
That is.
I was going to say when he's not taking photographs, he's seeing patients. So
I can what's it called? WebMD stuff. That's all Frank does.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know if
you don't need you don't need a real medical license. It's okay.
Oh. So Frank, what do you think about that? What's one of the most important things to remember when you're traveling?
Well, I think probably David. Yeah, I think David hit it on the head with the scopolamine, and of course, as a physician, I often forget that, which is really kind of embarrassing because I've been in situations where I really shouldn't have forgotten that, and there's no excuse. Years ago, I used to mountain climb. I was the doctor on mountain climbs, and I'd take like a ton of medical stuff, and then after getting away from that, I developed a weight to strength ratio as opposed to strength to weight ratio. So I stopped doing that. But I basically didn't stop bringing a medical kit with me wherever I go. But that was great advice. The other 2 things I always have with me is a flashlight or headlamp. and my Leatherman, because I never know when I'm out whether I got to do a little fix-it job. And my son got me this really nice Leatherman that does everything except row the boat and cook dinner, and it's really nice. And so I take that with me wherever I go, and a flashlight.
All the time, that is great to have a light with you. How many times have you been traveling, get ready to get in the rental car, and you're standing in the parking lot somewhere? You're like, oh, I got to have something, and I can't see anything, so you get your phone out and try to find it that way. A flashlight's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. And a Leatherman, I think everybody needs a knife somewhere close, or pliers or a screwdriver or something. There's always something that can need attention when you're out, doesn't it? It seems like no matter how well I pack, something needs a little bit of attention while I'm out there.
Yeah. So. And if I have to do a quick surgical procedure, the Leatherman will do. Right. Yeah. It's got the saw and
David was saying just the same thing just the other day too.
Yeah.
That he's I've
done a lobotomy with a Leatherman. Yeah, sometimes you have to.
Right. Yeah, it was amazing. You could do it on yourself.
Yeah. I know. I feel more stable after having done that.
Right. You don't even need the patch anymore.
Yeah, and if you pack the Leatherman, put it in your checked bag. Because
yes, definitely.
I still have a very painful memory of having to leave my Leatherman with the fine folks at TSA.
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah,
it's horrible.
It's pretty stinky.
And a good deal of the time, probably 80% of the time when we go anywhere for fishing, we actually fly our own plane. So I rarely check myself. I just, we just can take pretty much anything on board. I pack the cannon and everything, whatever. So it's really nice because we don't have to worry about that too much.
Have you ever hijacked your own plane?
I do it all the time.
That's awesome.
I take myself hostage, and then you have to put 7500 in the transponder. That indicates that you've been hijacked, so other people know about it.
It's like an out of body experience.
Does air traffic control say, "Never mind, it's just Frank"?
They usually send up some F-16s.
Yeah, they scramble.
Right.
Anytime they scramble some of those, so that's the best.
Yeah, scramble something big.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on here to this looks like the last question. Is it already? It sure is. Dang.
It's gone quick.
It sure has. Well, this will slow it down just a little bit. We've been through traveling. We've hit a couple things: flying, driving, what to take, where to stay, what to look for in lodges. But I think we've done a pretty good job of giving our listeners something that they can use. Definitely a platform with some basic questions, some basic answers that'll get somebody started. And I guarantee you somebody's like, wow, I didn't think of that, because I was a couple of different times. That's good information there. But what question haven't we asked, David, that would be helpful for the traveling angler?
I think, it's always like anytime you gain experience in any area of life, you always learn more of the questions that you need to ask to be better and have a better experience, or, to be more valuable or whatever. One question I think traveling anglers really need to ask every trip, even if you're a great fly angler, even if you're a great fly caster, even if you have success everywhere else you go, you need to ask your lodge outfitter, guide, whoever, the perfect angler at this water where I'm going to be fishing with you, what skill set do they have? Because I can tell you, like, I'm pretty confident in my casting ability, not like I'm a Steve Rajeff or anything like that, but I feel like I can go pretty much anywhere and have a decent level of success. But then you go anywhere in the world, it seems like, any type of water, they're going to have different techniques, different approaches that you might not ever use. One example being, if you go fish the Missouri River in Montana and you're drift boat fishing, I don't do a ton of drift boat fishing. And so you need to be able to reach cast downstream at an angle and to know how to mend. It's a totally different thing. I mend all the time. I fly fished for 16 or 17 years. And man, I felt like, a brand new fly angler the first couple hours that I was trying to do this reach cast and then keep mending and feeding this dry fly, keeping it still in some little back eddy, hopefully long enough for some brown trout to be able to get his eyes on it and come up and eat it before it starts getting, that drag on it and pulls it down river. So I think that's the question. What skill set do I need? And then figure out how you can practice that and get, even if it's just a little bit proficient at it, that's more quality time that you're buying on that trip. instead of having to learn from scratch while you're there.
That goes right along with our Tarpon 101 discussion a couple of episodes back. And one of the things that we hit on there in a big way was be prepared. And since we were talking about tarpon, we were talking about know how to double haul.
Oh, yeah.
But knowing how to reach cast from a boat, drift boat, while you're floating down the river and holding that fly like you're talking about in maybe a little back eddy or something, and being able to mend and feed and do all those things that as a drift boat angler I can probably do okay. But if I'm not a drift boat angler, then it's all new to me. So having that discussion up front and being prepared for those things, I think that's a quality answer right there. I would say the same is talk to the guide. Make sure that you're able to talk to the guide wherever you're going.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to shark fish. I want to do a episode on shark fishing. One reason why I want to do an episode on shark fishing is because I want to go catch some more shark on the fly and be good at it.
Yeah.
Because they pull the right kind of sharks, pull like nothing else.
Yeah, that's like number one on my list.
Is it really?
The number one thing on my list I want to catch on the fly that I haven't is Mako shark. Like I want to go out and fish with Conway Bowman, and wow, that would be a blast.
Yeah, I'd love to do that too. I need to catch a tarpon too, but I would take that Mako for sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to have that picture of the Mako, flipping in the background and all that, like I would a tarpon. And I've caught, sharks on fly, small ones, pretty good size ones, spinner sharks, all kinds of stuff that's in the Gulf. But I've never went and said, let's go target sharks, and I think that even if it wasn't Mako, I think it would be cool just to go out there and do that.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things I would want to know is, what don't I know? What's the question that I don't know?
Yeah.
To ask, because that's very important. I think that was a good answer, David. Really.
Thanks.
Good. Well, I think this was helpful for anglers, and I think also that this one kind of bleeds over into people in general who travel too. Even if you're traveling let's say you're traveling for rock climbing, or Frank, you were talking about mountain climbing or triathlons or whatever. I think some of this advice here that could bleed over into those areas too. So
yeah, for sure.
I think other people can find value in it too. And if you find value in the podcast, please drop by the Southeastern Flies store at southeasternfly.com. Explore that merch that fuels the Southeastern Fly podcast. We've got hats and hoodies and new winter wares available. And that's what supports the cost of the podcast. If you need additional information on or off the water on fly fishing techniques, flies, fly tying, gear, travel, that sort of thing, we also offer fly fishing coaching sessions. Thanks to Frank Rosenbloom for stopping by to join us. He's the inventor of the airlock. Man, I think it's great, Frank, that you were able to sit in with us on this episode, and I really appreciate your answers. I think they come from every time we get a group together like this, everybody's answers come from a little bit more unique view, totally different direction a lot of times, and I think you added some value to this for sure. And I appreciate you joining us, and hopefully you'll join us again.
Love to. Thank you.
And David, thank you for getting this thing together for us. Remember, David Cannon is a full-time outdoor photographer. You can see his work in ads and publications such as Cabela's, Bass Pro, Southern Living, Fly Fish Journal, Winston Rods, Strung Magazine, Gray's Sporting Journal, and Tail Fly Fishing. He's an excellent photographer when you need a professional. David, again, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks so much, David.
You just listened to David Cannon and Frank Rosenbloom on the Southeastern Fly podcast. See you next time. I don't know how long that was, but it sure felt like it was like 10 minutes.
I know.
It really did. And I was thinking something. When you talked about, you really think about catching one of those Mako sharks.
Yeah.
You can be very happy in the fact that that Mako shark is thinking about catching a daybreak.
Yeah, that's
So,
right.
you know,
I like that dynamic. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
There's not many like
True.
He's probably,
yeah, like a rainbow wants nothing to do with me.
right, exactly. It's not thinking it's going to take you, but a Mako shark is thinking, you know, right now they're thinking, I wonder when some nice photographer is going to fish for me and I can grab him and take him down.
Take a big chunk out. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
That's exciting.
What do you do if you get one on close to the boat? Because I've seen like Conway Bowman casting not very far from the boat.
Yeah.
And hook them in, and they always seem to run away.
Oh, yeah.
What if they didn't and they started jumping and they ended up in the boat? You can't jump out.
At that point, you just find a gun and end yourself because you don't want it, because you don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, you can't jump in the water because there's other ones out there.
Right, yeah.
Yet you really can't stay in the boat because he's in there flopping around and probably would break if it's a good size one, it'd probably break your leg or something if he didn't bite you.
No, at that point, you just tackle the tail and bear hug the tail for dear life.
Doesn't sound really good.
No, but I don't think there's a good option.
Yeah, true. I haven't run into a good option yet. You're probably right. Just go ahead and take the bite and get it over with.
And I want to know what kind of fly you use for caiman.
You can catch a caiman on the fly rod.
Can you really?
Yeah, if you throw like a big popper, they'll follow it all the way into the boat.
Will they really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, just like a gator in South Georgia or in Florida does.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Except these things are more aggressive. They'll follow it to the boat with 4 guys standing up. I don't know what they think that is. Like from their perspective, they're looking at a boat, like a 18-foot bass boat with 4 creatures 6 feet tall, stand up looking at it. They swim right to it. And when they can't get that popper in its mouth, I've had them where they'll turn and nail the boat with their tail, like smack it. Like they're just the most fearless, crazy things, I guess a la Mako shark.
I'm not kidding. I really do want that picture of you with holding a cane.
Yeah, I've actually got it on my phone, so I'll send it to you.